Okay, let's end on something maybe a little less, brain busty. Let's talk about Matt Powell. Matt Powell doesn't believe the Big Bang Theory is a thing that has any salience. So, let's talk about that real quick. Hey, buddy.
That is. I don't believe in the Big Bang Theory, and in this video I'm going to give you 10 reasons why that is.
Okay. So I can understand somebody taking the stance that they don't believe in the theory of how, you know, t equals 0, how time came to be, how the world in which we understand it had the first steps of chemical shittery happened that could have possibly led to what we have today. I understand not necessarily believing that because you weren't a witness to it. But, okay, let's see where your information is coming from.
Number one, because if everything was condensed down into an infinitely dense hot point, everything that you see, and that hot point exploded, let me say only smaller particles are going to fly off. It's not going to...
How? Smaller particles that become less dense become larger particles. When something is infinitely dense, when it expands, the particles that come out can be bigger than the original particle. Because their mass is different. Mass is the thing that doesn't change. Mass is the thing that would be smaller in the new particles. But the actual individual particles, while less massive, would still be larger.
Going to construct larger pieces of material, it's only going to shatter and break down into smaller pieces of energy. Reason number two would be that you cannot take a small piece of energy or dust and convert it into a boulder, for example, or...
You can, actually. Here, I'm going to give you evidence that you can, okay? Because when you take something small and convert it into something... Because what he's arguing against is you can't take something small and convert it into something large, okay? Let me give you an example that you all understand immediately when I show you, that you'll know exactly where I'm going with this. All of you know what these are. Every single one of you. These are densely condensed sponges. And when these sponges break out of their container, they become larger and are less dense. Every single one of you knows what one of these things are. But we're talking about infinitely dense things. So let's go back to Matt Powell.
A planet, for example, it is impossible. There is no way to convert these small materials, this infinitely dense hot point that they claim that the Big Bang was, into gigantic pieces of rock.
Again, you are taking a dense material, and you are taking a sliver of the dense material, and then letting it expand in a space where its mass is not changing. Dude has never heard of a fucking Starforge. Listen to this guy is actually giving me psychic damage. Like, his argument is literally, how small thing make big thing? Yeah, human babies exist, my guy. They grow into big things. How small thing get big? Small thing can never get big. Small thing small. Small thing always small. Small thing supposed to be small. No, my guy, that's not how the world works. That's not how chemistry works. That's not how taking base elements and making something out of them works. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
The third reason is that you cannot convert dust to water. Again, in the Big Bang model,
You're not condensing dust. Okay, so what he's doing is he is, well, one, lying, but two, what he's doing is saying something that sounds like common sense, but it's a full-on misrepresentation of what happens. So, I'm curious. If I have a quark, just a little quark, a little subatomic particle, one could accurately call that dust. Because what actually dust is, you know, skin flakes that have fallen off, and they've mixed with bits of dirt, and now they're on top of your counter cabinet. And, you know, like Brianna Wu, you didn't fucking clean them. That's what dust is. But the material that comes out of a Starforge, the material that comes out of a star that is doing nuclear fusion or fission, whichever one the fuck it is, in order to make helium, for instance, or the denser elements, or the heavier elements is what they're called. That is not dust. Those are just base elements. So if I have a little quark, something you could accurately call dust if you were stretching the definition of the word pretty heavily, I could make water from that. That is a thing that I could do, because water is made up of quarks and atoms. He uses the word dust because you think of the flaked off fucking skin cells. But the accurate word would be smaller material. Can you make bigger material from smaller material? And the answer is yes. You get enough of that smaller material together. You get a bunch of quarks together to make hydrogen. You get a bunch of quarks together to make oxygen. You get the hydrogen atom and the oxygen atom to play nice together, and suddenly you have fucking water.
Claim that energy or dust was compacted down and then exploded and converted into all of the elements on the periodic table.
They didn't explode and convert into. It was a process. And to ignore that process, or to obfuscate that process, where literal star forges were formed out of the particles that came from the Big Bang, and those star forges, over the course of several thousand and even several million years, created heavier elements. Not created, but you know what I mean. Literally forged heavier elements. Thank you for the follow, Axidede. I appreciate it. Is again, to just obfuscate what we actually do. Not you and me, the species, but like particles in general, because you're just fucking stardust, right? It's to ignore what star forges actually do to make heavier elements. When you just go, oh, it exploded into all these different elements. Like, no, that is an obfuscation on what actually happened.
Including water, and that is impossible for that to have
You keep saying it's impossible, but like, you're here, so it happened.
Reason number 4 would be that there are certain elements that you cannot compress past a certain point. Take a gallon of water, for example. Could a gallon of water fit inside of, or be compressed down into, a dot that is smaller than a period on a page?
So again, you're misattributing what is claimed. The claim is not that there is a finite amount of water in the universe, and that finite amount of water in the universe was condensed into a small dense state. The actual atomic structure of what the material was in the infinitely dense state was not what you and I would perceive to be water. Water is comprised of heavier elements, which were not possible to be created. Like, those things could not have been created with the material on its own that was in the heavy dense state that we have for the Big Bang Theory. Again, you're ignoring the process by which helium has been created. Big Bang happens, star forges appear from the base elements from the Big Bang, heavier elements are created, those heavier elements can then be used to produce things like water. But the water itself is not being compacted. Lenari says, I was too nice earlier, all 10 of his reasons boil down to I'm willfully ignorant and refuse to learn. Jermainon says, nuclear fission, the reactor we use to make energy, is literally reducing the density of a material.
Absolutely not. That is impossible. So there's no way that all of the matter that we see existed as energy previously and was condensed down into a infinitely dense hot point. Reason number 5 is that chaotic explosions do not create orderly systems. Think about it. We live...
So, you know that our system is only considered orderly because we perceive it that way, right? Like, if you actually go out into space, it's not gonna seem fucking orderly. The asteroids being yanked everywhere is not gonna seem orderly to you. It's technically orderly because there's gravity, but you are, again, misattributing what orderly means.
In the Milky Way galaxy, it is an orderly system. We have a solar system with planets that go about in a specific orbit. How could a random explosion create something like that? That is impossible.
So, his argument here is, I can't perceive of a way that it could have happened, therefore it's impossible. Literally, the most boring, thought-terminating argument one could make.
Possible. Reason number 6 is that explosions destruct things. They
Wait, reason number 6 is the same as reason number 5. Explosions destruct things. Okay, right. and an explosion destructed the infinitely dense state, and then as things formed around each other because of gravity, we got star forges. Congratulations. Point number 6 actually supports the Big Bang Theory, how we understand it.
Destroy. They're claiming in the Big Bang model that we came from a rapid expansion or an explosion. If you have an explosion that occurred from an infinitely dense hot point, it is going to wreak havoc on whatever is in its path. It's not going to construct a solar system like I mentioned in the...
Well, hold on. Wreak havoc again on everything in its path? There's no thing in its path. All of the thing that we understand was in the infinitely dense state. There's nothing to wreak havoc on. So you just have material flying outwards. And when material is flying outwards, when enough of that material gets dense enough, because it's piled on together, it creates a gravity around itself. And when the gravity around itself gets strong enough to attract more and more things, then you get a bigger star forge. Jesus fucking Christ, my guy. Like, I'm getting half of this shit wrong, and I'm still correct compared to you.
The last point, it's not going to create order out of chaos. It is just simply impossible. Explosions destruct. God must have constructed this universe.
No, what you're doing is you are doing the God of the Gaps fallacy. I cannot conceive of a method by which this happened, therefore a God needed to be the argument for it. Which means now you have to prove God. Congratulations, you've just made your life way harder for yourself.
Reason number 7 is that dust cannot start a fire. Think about it, you've got...
Again, you're misattributing what dust is. You're using the word dust as a stand-in for, quantum particles, atoms, fucking quarks. You're using dust as a stand-in for small particles. And guess what? Small particles do produce fire.
Nuclear fusion in space, the sun. Could energy exploding just cause the sun to come into existence? Nuclear fusion.
Eventually, yes.
You cannot get a fire from nothing. These elements would have worn out and broken down, deteriorated and shattered into non-existence. They would not have constructed anything.
Okay. NASA, save me. Our sun formed approximately 4.6 billion years ago when a giant cloud of gas and dust. Okay, so at least the word dust is being used here. But that's NASA. Let's see what they have to say. It's a huge ball of hydrogen and helium held together by its own gravity. The sun has several regions. Okay, I'm looking at formation. Okay. The sun formed about 4.6 billion years ago in a giant spinning cloud of gas and dust called the solar nebula. As the nebula collapsed under its own gravity, it spun faster and flattened into a disk. Most of the nebulous material was pulled towards the center to form our sun, which accounts for 99.8% of our solar system's mass. Much of the remaining material formed the planets and other objects that now orbit the sun. The rest of the leftover gas and dust was blown away by the young sun's early solar wind. Like all stars, the sun will eventually run out of energy. So, a couple things that I have to say. NASA's using the term dust, fair, but again, the word dust being used by NASA does not mean the same thing as the dust that's on your aunt, your aunt's fucking carousel that she leaves out because she promises you that it's a fairly heirloom that matters a lot to her, but she's never dusted the damn thing, she doesn't care about the damn thing. That dust and the dust that's in the solar nebula are not the same thing. Burn says stable elements ain't breaking down in just a couple billion years. That's just the radioactive elements. Yep. But also, it's pointing out here exactly what douche nozzle Matt Powell is saying over here. Matt Powell says, well, actually, the sun would have ran out by now. Well, no, not really. The sun will eventually run out of energy. Yes, absolutely. But that doesn't mean the sun would have ran out by now, because for that statement to be true, you need to have modes of comparison. It would have run out by now. Okay, compared to what? What are we comparing this to? Other suns? Other stars? Because we can do that and we can figure out what our sun's life cycle is going to be. And we've already done that. We already know what our sun's life cycle is going to be eventually. This is not new information. Burn says dust, sand, gravel, etc. refer to the size of the particle and not the type of thing that it is. Correct. When you say dust can't make a thing, but I have a bunch. When you say dust can't make fire, but I have a bunch of magnesium dust, I can produce a fire out of that. Because the actual dust that you're referring to and the dust that NASA's referring to are different things. Small particles is all they're talking about when they say dust.
Reason number 8 is that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. According to the Big Bang Theory, everything was condensed down. Everything that you see, all the stars, planets, galaxies, and oceans was condensed down as energy into this infinitely dense hot point. And then in a billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a second, it went from the size of that tiny point to something billions of miles across.
So the expansion theory of the universe says that the universe is still currently expanding. That's why we can see, I think it's called a redshift in the universe, where we actually can measure light in the universe and see that there are different wavelengths of light that are moving at various speeds. Yeah, redshift. And by looking at that, we can ascertain that the universe is still expanding. And since we can ascertain that the universe is still expanding, then we can ascertain that the universe had a point where it started expanding. So this point just seems nonsensical.
No joke, that is what they claim, and that is trillions of times faster than the speed of light. That is scientifically impossible. Nothing can travel faster than the speed of light.
I wonder if Matt Powell would be willing to get an astrophysicist to talk with him about how the universe came to be. Like somebody whose actual job it is to explain this stuff instead of like a fucking VTuber cat girl boy thing on the internet. I wonder if he'd be willing to have that conversation with somebody with actual expertise that could debunk every claim that he made, like in real time. Thermodynamics says, wrong, Suris, all wavelengths of light travel at the exact same speed. Okay. Said red shifts moves away, blue shifts is moving towards us. Okay, so I got that incorrect. Again, I'm not an expert, but unlike Matt Powell, I don't claim to be an expert. I can just be incorrect about something, accept that somebody who knows more about something has corrected me, and I can move to the next thing, because I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert in cosmology. I'm not an expert in chemistry. I'm not an expert in any of the fields that I would need to be in to properly debunk Matt, but I know enough to know he's wrong, because I know Matt doesn't know enough to be right. Jasmine says Matt wouldn't talk to an expert. He thinks Kent Hoban has a doctorate. Nina Goblin says it also took trillions of years of particles moving at near light speed to get as big of a universe as we have right now. Yep.
Reason number 9 is the first law of thermodynamics. Believe it or not, you cannot get something from nothing. A lot of people think that...
Well, nobody's saying that you did get something from nothing, but continue.
You can, and a lot of people assert that the Big Bang was something from nothing, that there was literally nothing in that infinitely dense point. Nothing created everything.
Wait, hold on. You said there's nothing in the infinitely dense point? Well, no. The only person I can think of who actually argues that is like Lawrence Krauss, but the infinitely dense point is not nothing, it's everything. Like, that's the opposite of what you're talking about. Everything and nothing are not the same thing. There was everything in the infinitely dense point.
Some people do espouse that. How is that possible? How is nothing going to explode and create everything?
You mean everything explodes and then the form factor that everything takes changes? Because that's more accurate to what happened.
Is so ludicrous. This shows that there had to have been an external force that created, and that leads into point number 10, that you cannot get an explosion from nothing. Not only do some people think that there was nothing in this infinitely dense hot point, but that nothing caused it to explode. It just happened to explode for no reason. What if I claimed that nothing caused something to explode in this room where I'm filming? You probably wouldn't believe me, right?
Okay, so, as for the reason for the Big Bang, the reason why is unknown. But again, scientists who study this are willing to say it's unknown as opposed to inserting their own shit. Also, interesting, I really quickly want to show you guys how shit AI is, by the way. So when I looked this up, Google obviously gives its AI overview first. The cause of the Big Bang Theory is unknown, but the leading hypothesis is that it was initiated by a quantum fluctuation or a period of rapid expansion known as inflation. Okay, fair enough. This video explains how the Big Bang started from a single point and expanded outwards. This video
Let me use an analogy. If you have a balloon and
This video from Discovery Science, with a description saying, did the universe really pop out of nothing? Quantum physicists say yes, but that explanation doesn't hold up. In this video, Stephen Meyer unpacks how the Big Bang actually points to something beyond matter, energy, and time itself.
Of surprising discoveries. First, it became clear that almost all the galaxies in the universe are moving away from us. Then it got weirder. Two guys figured out that generally the farther a galaxy is from us, the faster it's moving away. One was a Belgian physicist and Catholic priest.
So I'm already kind of like predisposed to not listening to the opinions of somebody who uses an Anon mask. Just generally. Why is he wearing the mask? Yep. It is desperation. The physics law of conservation of mass and energy are accumulated in the Big Bang model because matter and energy is not constant in the Big Bang model. Let's see here. There's no such thing as coincidence. Whatever happens, happens for a reason. The reason might be outside of our intellect in the universe. It's greater than human intellect. What's with the Voldemort nose on the mask?
Jean Lemaitre. The second was American astronomer Edwin Hubble. Drawing on Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity, they then realized that space itself is expanding. Physicist Brian Miller explains why.
let me use an analogy. If you have a balloon and you imagine putting dots on that balloon to represent galaxies, and then that balloon inflates, what happens is all the dots move away from each other. And dots that are further apart will move away from each other even faster. And that's exactly the sort of evidence we see in our universe.
This discovery suggests that if you reverse time, like a movie running backward, then all the galaxies would draw back together to a single point, which led to a conclusion that some scientists didn't really want to face.
The universe has been expanding from a finite beginning point, where not only matter and energy, but time and space itself began.
Today, scientists call this first moment of the universe the Big Bang.
It all started with the Big Bang.
The Big Bang
Cyberchill says, if you don't want to show your face, you don't have to show your face. I've always kind of found it odd, even when leftist creators like Logic does that. Why do they need an avatar? So wearing the mask. Okay, so a couple things. I don't actually think Logic is a leftist. I'm not 100% certain, but I don't think that he is. But again, I don't know. I've had only a handful of political conversations with Logic. Do wish that me and him were still friends, though. Like, I don't know why we aren't. It just kind of stopped at one point. Anyway, not really important. As for the why do they need an avatar so wearing a mask, I feel like the language there, like, do they need an avatar so wearing the mask? I don't think, like, those sentences are complete enough for me to ascertain what you mean by that, Cyberchill. Lenari says he could get any mask to stay anonymous on the net. Why that mask? Yeah, who knows?
Big Bang Theory means the universe is not eternal after all. It has a beginning. Even more radical, the Big Bang implies that the cause of the universe must be something non-material.
The Big Bang shows that all of time, matter, space, and energy started at a single moment in the past. Therefore, whatever started it has to be outside of time and space.
You can't posit a materialistic explanation because there's no matter.
Okay, I see what it is. I see what it is. The video is trying to go... It's AI grabbing a creationist video and trying to say that that's going to be what is the evidence that we need. Oh, it's Stephen Meyer. He's the guy behind Darwin's Doubt and Signature in the Cell. This dude's like a heavy fucking creationist. Thanks, AI Overview, for being absolutely garbage. Bumburn says, again, matter always being created everywhere, just in very tiny amounts. No, matter is not being created anywhere. Matter can't be created or destroyed. Paige says, how do you show up in the algo? Because when I looked up this bit, it immediately pulled up him. AI Overview said, yeah, look at this video that explains how the universe came to be, and it's a fucking creationist video. AI is bullshit. AI is bullshit. It really is. Okay. Well, Matt, let's see what your last thing is. Let's see what your last thing is.
Let's say that's a little bit crazy. What if I said nothing caused a detonation to take place? The universe isn't just going to appear from nothing and from an explosion that was caused by nothing. It had to have been created by a god who made the decision to create something from nothing.
Or it doesn't have to be a god. Again, the problem with this explanation here, for me, is that it doesn't actually explain anything. It kicks the can down a little bit more. When you ask this question of, why did the Big Bang start? Why did the expansion of the universe happen? The answer that you can give is going to be either the correct answer, the answer you make up, or I don't know. Matt is very, very certain that the answer he gives is correct. I am very certain that the answer he gives is made up. My answer is I don't know.
Made the choice to create matter and energy. These are just some of many reasons why I reject the Big Bang Theory and I accept creation science as being true. I believe that God created the world. I do not believe for a second that the world created itself.
Matt, you believe the world is 6,000 years old, but lead exists. And lead existing disproves a 6,000-year-old Earth. Because the half-life of uranium creates lead. So uranium would have had to have existed long enough to turn to fucking lead. Jesus Christ, my guy. So Matt, you got indoctrinated as a baby. I used to date somebody who claimed to be a childhood friend of Matt's. But this person also claimed to be a princess from Japan, a child-murdering person from the United States military, an orphan who was born into a cult of redheads, and all kinds of other shit. It felt like being constantly gaslit. That's what that relationship felt like. Said reincarnation? No, they claimed that all of these were the life that she personally had led. It's wild. People are wild, man. People are wild. Anyway, there's Matt's bullshit reasons why he doesn't think the Big Bang Theory happened. And my response is, I don't know what happened, but I'm not arrogant enough to claim that I do know. And I'm willing to look up the information when necessary. That said, I just realized I'm in a very unsafe location. I guess I'll log out here. Dragonic says creation science is an oxymoron. Yep. Anyway, that's it for this one, guys. Let me know what you thought in the comments section below, and feel free to make fun of Matt. He's a very make-fun-of-able guy. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagitt, I'm not saying that last part, Valis of Seraph, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.